Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Maeve's plan was to weaken and possibly seriously injure the Beast King using the apostles she brought with her. Once the domain disappeared, she would immediately use her artifact that would teleport her to the underground headquarters of the Divine Army, escaping her current situation. Since the Beast King had changed sides, she no longer treated him as a comrade and ordered all of her subordinates to attack him without mercy. Although they were reluctant to leave her alone, the 15 remaining apostles all activated their ability and turned into pseudo-supremes. They had seen how the Beast King had dealt with their comrades earlier, so they wouldn't allow the same thing to happen to them. A moment later, the 15 pseudo-supremes and the giant white tiger clashed. Loud explosions erupted within the dimensional domain, destroying the city devoid of any of its citizens. Maeve looked at this scenario with a sneer on her face while continuing to distance herself from the battlefield. However, just as she was about to reach the edge of the domain, a cold and disdainful voice sounded in her ears. "You can run, but you can't hide from me, B*T." The Oracle immediately dodged to her right side, evading a punch from the fox lady, Hannah, whose bloodshot eyes locked onto the Oracle's body. Piece 1, an only true Covenant member, hated the Oracle with a vengeance. Her hatred for Maeve was just as strong as Lux's and Hirswith's, and she wanted nothing more than to beat up the hateful woman who orchestrated the hardships of her previous and current masters. Hannah had unsealed her limiter, allowing her to become a Calamity-ranked monster. Although her strength was only at the initial stages of the Calamity rank, it was more than enough to deal with a Saintess. Unfortunately, Maeve wasn't an ordinary Saintess. Just like all Calamity-ranked monsters were not equal, all Saints were not equal. Using her powers of divination, the Oracle was able to evade all of Hannah's attacks as if she were able to see 5 seconds ahead of time. No matter what Hannah did, she wasn't able to land an attack on Maeve's body, so both of them continued their dogfight in the air. The Oracle also counterattacked from time to time, landing blows on Hannah's body. However, the Fox Lady's anger and determination to avenge her master, GAP, allowed her to ignore the pain and continue fighting with the same intensity as before. The battle continued for several minutes until the Oracle noticed a shift in the battlefield. Useless fools. Maeve cursed internally when she noticed that more than half of the 15 apostles had been knocked unconscious by the Beast King. Truth be told, the reason why the Beast King was able to handle so many pseudo-supremes at once was not due to his strength. Although he was powerful, that didn't mean that he could easily overcome 15 opponents. The reason why he was able to get the upper hand was due to Lux. The half-elf had ordered some of his Calamity-ranked subordinates to help the Beast King. This gave Dylan the chance to knock out the members of the Divine Army, canceling the effects of their ability. Seeing that she would soon be outnumbered, Maeve started to feel anxious. Although she was confident that she could avoid Hannah's attacks, she wasn't too optimistic about her chances of escaping from the Beast King's grasp. She had the ability to predict the future, allowing her to evade the other party's attacks, but the difference in rank was something that she couldn't overcome so easily. Also, she wasn't fighting just one opponent. She had a feeling that Lux would also order his other Calamity-ranked beasts to deal with her, and this thought made her feel anxious. Knowing that time wasn't on her side, Maeve made a bold choice. She kicked away Hannah, sending her flying backward. After that, she charged in the direction of the Beast King, with the intention of linking her divination with the apostles. This way, they would be able to effectively attack their targets and weaken the Beast King to a certain extent. Using that opportunity, Maeve would create a crack within the domain and escape. Her plan worked wonders, and in just a span of half a minute, the Pseudo-Supremes were able to land hits on the Beast King's body, allowing them to gain the upper hand. Soon, cracks started to appear in the sky of the domain, allowing Maeve to see her path of escape. Seeing that a particularly large chunk of the sky fell, the Oracle instantly took out her artifact and activated it. But nothing happened. The Oracle frowned as she looked at her artifact before repeatedly activating it. However, the artifact still didn't work. "What's wrong?" Lux asked in a teasing tone. "Can't escape?" "What did you do?" Maeve asked. She was doing her best to prevent her voice from cracking due to her anxiety. "Oh, nothing much," Lux replied with a devilish smile on his face. "I just asked my subordinates to create a space lock inside this place. This is the same strategy you used against me back in the Divine Empire to prevent me from using any teleportation skills. I'm just returning the favor." The Oracle felt her heart turn cold after hearing Lux's reply. She had been quite confident that she would be able to pull off this operation well. She thought that she could finally enslave the half-elf, who managed to cheat death in the Divine Empire after GAAP had switched places with him. Suddenly, 3 of the apostles screamed as they were mobbed by the dozens of calamity-ranked monsters that had joined the battle. Lux was done playing games and had decided to take things seriously. Without another word, Maeve roared as she flew toward the crack in the sky. She deftly evaded the calamity-ranked monsters that tried to block her path using the full power of her divination ability. But just as she was about to pass through the crack in the sky, she suddenly found herself standing directly in front of the half-elf, who was poised to unleash a dragon breath. She didn't even have time to blink when the raging inferno hit her at point-blank range, making her scream in pain. When the dragon breath receded, the Oracle felt a searing pain, not only in her body but also in her soul. This otherworldly pain had dulled her senses a bit, preventing her from reacting to Lux's kick that mercilessly hit her abdomen, sending her crashing toward the ground. The Oracle collided with countless buildings before coming to a complete stop. All of Lux's attacks were imbued with the power of his divine abyssal touch, which damaged and corrupted the souls of his targets. This passive ability ignored all types of defense, including defensive artifacts, allowing him to deal true damage to anything he hit. Maeve desperately tried to prop herself up, but before she could do that, a foot slammed down on the back of her head, smashing her face into the ground. Hannah shouted in anger as she repeatedly stomped on the Oracle's head, creating an ever-expanding crater under the Oracle's body. Maeve's beautiful face was now a bloody mess, and it only became bloodier as the Fox Lady vented her anger and frustration on the woman she wanted to torture for eternity. It was at that moment that Maeve finally realized that she had made a grave mistake. The half-elf was no longer the powerless individual that they had bullied and hunted down in the past. The hunter had now become the hunted. This realization had come a bit late, and the Oracle of the Divine Army understood with every fiber of her being that her suffering was just about to begin. "Stop. No more. I beg you. Please stop. End me. Just kill me. Kill me. Kill me," Maeve shouted and pleaded, but her desperate cries fell on deaf ears. Hannah kicked her away before instantly teleporting above her. She then grabbed the Oracle's head and smashed it to the ground, dragging her for half a kilometer. The beautiful Oracle, who was well respected by everyone in Elysium, was no longer recognizable. Her face had been turned into a mess, bloody and disfigured. It was a stark contrast to what she looked like before she decided to face off against Lux and the Beast Empire. Her pride, her arrogance, her confidence, all of these things and more could no longer be seen. The Oracle was now like a piece of tattered rag that Hannah was using to wipe the floor with. The Beast King looked at this scene from the sky with a complicated look on his face. He truly regretted his decision, but it was too late to do anything. Maeve wanted nothing more than for her suffering to end. But Hannah was making sure that her attacks dealt as much pain as possible, without actually endangering the Oracle's life. She broke Maeve's nose. She scratched her face. She broke her fingers one by one. She broke her limbs one after the other. Hannah did everything she could do to vent her anger, but it was not enough. A single Oracle's life was not enough to stop the hurt inside her chest. "Hannah, that's enough," Lux stated. The Fox Lady looked at her new master in confusion. "What do you mean, Lux?" Hannah asked back. "She hasn't suffered enough." "Of course, she hasn't suffered enough," Lux replied, "so stop taking it easy on her." Hannah frowned. She had been torturing the Oracle for nearly half an hour, and she wasn't holding back in the slightest. However, Lux still thought that she was taking it easy. The Beast King shuddered when he heard the half-elf's words. Even he found the Oracle's treatment to be unnerving, and yet, The red-headed teenager still thought that it was going easy on her. However, before the Beast King and Hannah could even say anything, Lux's next words made both of their hearts shudder. "Skin her alive," Lux ordered. "Make sure to do it slowly." After Hannah regained her composure, a wicked smile appeared on her face. "You're right, Master," Hannah bowed respectfully. "I apologize for taking it easy on her. Thank you for correcting me." The fox lady then raised her hand and the nails on her fingers extended. Soon, the oracle's pained shrieks reverberated in the surroundings. While this was happening, Lux shifted his gaze to the Beast King, which made the latter flinch. "You are going to submit to me, correct?" Lux asked. "Yes," the Beast King replied through gritted teeth. "As long as you promise that you will not hurt my family and people." "Good," Lux nodded. "But I still don't trust you. You are a supreme, so you can break your word at any time." "I won't break my word." "Don't worry. I will make sure that you won't break your word." Lux then raised his hands and dozens of calamity-ranked monsters encircled the Beast King, making the latter frown. "I only trust the dead," Lux stated. "If you are serious about becoming my subordinate, you will have to die first." "Why you?" The Beast King looked at the half-elf in disbelief. "This isn't part of our agreement." "Agreement?" Lux smirked. "What agreement?" "You bastard. I'll kill you." "Can you?" The half-elf waved his hand, and the dozens of calamity-ranked monsters attacked the Beast King at the same time. A ferocious roar spread in the surroundings as Dylan took his demigod form. He was serious about becoming Lux's subordinate, but he had no intention of dying and becoming his mindless slave. "Roar as much as you want," Lux sneered. "Do you think that roaring will make a difference? Do you think it will make you stronger? I'll kill you even if it's the last thing I do." The Beast King's body shone in a radiant light as he burned his life essence to increase his strength drastically. He then opened his jaws to unleash a beam of light that would annihilate the hateful half-elf, who was looking at him with disdain. "Futile," Lux scoffed. The living armor, which he had reanimated inside the Pantheon of Exile, stood in front of Lux and transformed into a mirror. The beam of light that the Beast King had unleashed was absorbed inside it. A moment later, the living armor returned the attack to its owner, taking the latter by surprise. Dylan had poured all of his strength in that single attack, in hopes that it would kill the half-elf and wipe out his subordinates at the same time. Because of this, he did not have the strength to evade the same attack he had unleashed, which was now about to collide with his body. A loud roar filled with resentment and unwillingness erupted within the domain. The moment the Beast King's giant body crashed into the ground, his domain shattered completely. Soon, the citizens of the Beast Empire heard the oracle's pained shrieks as Hannah happily skinned her alive in the most gruesome and slowest way possible. Dylan, who had now reverted to his original form, lay on the ground as he struggled to prop himself up. However, one of his legs was missing, so his attempt to stand failed miserably. Lux then summoned the Spear of Longinus and ordered it to increase its length and size until it became 20 meters long. Just as he was about to throw his spear at the Beast King, two tigerkins, who were around 5 years old, ran to their father and hugged him tight. They were the Beast King's twin daughters, and they were bawling their eyes out as they tried to help their father stand up. Tears and snot covered the faces of the two girls as they called out their father's name and urged him to stand up. Dylan felt his heart breaking as he looked at his two daughters who were using their bodies to shield him from the giant spear that was aimed at his heart. Avernus, who was watching this scene with his arms crossed over his chest, looked at the half-elf with a calm expression on his face. He wanted to see if Lux had already lost his morality. Truth be told, he didn't care either way. He was just a little fond of the kind half-elf, whom he believed was not suited to become a necromancer. But, before Lux could even make his move, a black coffin appeared behind the two little girls. Its lid slid open, and a pair of shadowy hands emerged from it. Blackfire then unceremoniously knocked out the two little girls, who were clinging to their father. Dylan growled in anger as he angrily tried to stand up in order to save her daughters from the black coffin. He knew what this coffin could do. and he'd rather die than let it do anything to his daughters. You know, it's very funny. Do you really think that you're the only one who has the right to be angry when their family members are being targeted? A feminine voice spoke out from inside Blackfire. A second later, a specter of a beautiful woman appeared and looked down at the Beast King with cold eyes. Lux would never hurt the innocent, Aurora's foster mother, Queen Bianca, said firmly. It is you people who are forcing him to be cruel. Dylan calmed down when he heard the beautiful woman's words. His gaze landed on his two daughters, who were being cradled by Blackfire's shadowy hands as if they were very precious to it. Lux already told you earlier. Queen Bianca walked forward as a spectral sword appeared in her hand. He only trusts the dead, but I will give you a way out. Queen Bianca placed the tip of her spectral sword over Dylan's chest, where his heart was located. I will stab you with the intention to kill, Queen Bianca stated. But worry not. Just before you die, Blackfire will take you in before you breathe your last. That way, you will not have to be revived as an undead. Make no mistake, I am not asking for your permission. I am simply informing you about what I'm going to do. If not for your daughters, you would have died a gruesome death already. Without another word, the Queen of Agartha stabbed the Beast King's chest, ignoring his defense and piercing through his heart. He already didn't have the strength to resist due to how seriously injured he was after receiving his own desperate attack that was meant to kill Lux. Blackfire moved quickly and absorbed Dylan before he breathed his last. Queen Bianca then glanced at the half-elf and gave him a brief nod. Lux nodded back, and the giant spear above his head shrank. He then gazed at the oracle on the ground, who had just been peeled like a potato by Hannah. Maeve was still shrieking, but her voice gradually gave in. Hannah then looked at her master with a satisfied look on her face, but Lux's expression remained cold. Cover her body with honey and tie her up with magical chains, Lux ordered. There is a colony of crazed soldier ants nearby. I'm very sure that they will be very happy to have something to chew on. Lux had no intention of letting the oracle have it easy. Even if she was about to die, he would ensure that she would die a very slow and painful death. Just as she is about to breathe her last, he would allow Blackfire to absorb her. Then, when she recovered, he would start the process all over again, using different methods of torture. He had read many books about how people were tortured and killed when he was still back on Earth. Lux planned to use all of these methods on the Oracle while he destroyed all the kingdoms and empires that had allied themselves with the divine army of light, and make them understand that touching his reverse scale would bring them all to ruin. The royal family of the Zane Kingdom was currently having an emergency meeting. The Rhino King, who had ordered his subordinates to capture Aina and Colette, was now surrounded by his generals and ministers. They were trying to think of a way to appease the half-elf, who had just defeated the Beast King, as well as the Oracle of the Divine Army. The Rhino King knew that it was only a matter of time before Lux came knocking on their door. So while he still had time, he decided to summon his loyal subordinates and ask them for suggestions on how he would be able to survive the half-elf's wrath. Your Majesty, how about you empty the treasury and offer everything to him? One of his ministers proposed. That way, you will be able to show how sincere you are in apologizing for your mistake. The Rhino King's face turned grim after hearing the minister's proposal. The treasury is the backbone of our kingdom, the Rhino King stated. Without it, our kingdom will fall. How can you even propose such a thing? The minister lowered his head in embarrassment because he thought that this was a good idea. In his heart, no matter how much gold and treasures the royal family possessed, all of it would amount to nothing the moment Lux started his massacre. If that were to happen, who would stop the half-elf from looting the treasury? How about you step down from your throne, your Majesty, and pass the crown to the crown prince? One of the generals proposed. Then, you will allow yourself to become the half-elf's servant. Although His Majesty will be making a great sacrifice, our kingdom might be spared from destruction. The Rhino King thought for a bit and found this suggestion to be acceptable. Although he would definitely suffer at the hands of the half-elf, as long as his kingdom survived, he could accept this fate without any regrets. The ministers and the generals all made other proposals, and the king listened to them all. However, their discussion stopped when they felt an ominous presence coming from the east. "He's here." The Rhino King sighed. "General, hide my wives and children in the underground shelter. Please protect them with everything that you have." "Yes, Your Majesty," the general saluted and hurriedly left the conference room to carry out his duty. "All of you, stay here in the castle," the Rhino King ordered. "I will meet him myself." With a heavy heart, the Rhino King walked out of the conference room and flew towards the sky. He turned to face the eastern side of his kingdom and saw dark clouds moving towards his capital city at a very fast rate. 10 minutes later, darkness fell upon the land as the light of the sun was blocked by the clouds in the sky. The Rhino King looked at the half-elf, who was hovering in the sky, with an anxious expression on his face. "I know that I have wronged you, and I am willing to pay the price for my mistake," the Rhino King stated. "All I ask is that you spare my family and my people. I swear that I will do everything in my power." The Rhino King didn't get to finish his words because the Beast King himself had stabbed his chest with his claws, literally tearing his heart out. The Beast King didn't even bat an eye and crushed the Rhino King's heart, killing him instantly. "Get his family members," Lux ordered. "I'll give you 5 minutes to do it." The Beast King begrudgingly obeyed his master and headed to the underground shelter of the Zane Kingdom. That day, all the members of the Zane Kingdom's royal family were turned into half-life zombies by Lux. This was the same method that he used for Sid's close friend, Sean, as well as the merchants who had become his double agents inside Twilight Reign. As for the saints of the Zane Kingdom, all of them were beaten up until they almost died, allowing Blackfire to absorb them. The next place he visited was the Aston Kingdom. This was the kingdom that bordered the Xeno Kingdom and was also responsible for inciting the Zane Kingdom to capture Aina and Colette. Lux mercilessly killed the king and the advisor who catalyzed the entire scheme and didn't even bother to revive them. Just like what he did with the members of the Zane royal family, he turned the Aston royal family members into half-life zombies. But it didn't end there. From that day onwards, the Aston Kingdom became a vassal kingdom of the Xeno Kingdom. When the neighbors of the Xeno Kingdom heard this, all of them felt anxious. However, since they didn't play a role in the kidnapping incident, they believed that Lux wouldn't harm them. But they were still unwilling to take any chances. Because of their paranoia, they decided to send delegations to the Xeno Kingdom, bearing gifts and promises to help Victor and his kingdom with whatever they needed. They thought that by doing this, they would not have to worry about Lux and his army anymore. But they were wrong. Just like them, the half-elf wasn't willing to take any chances. He visited all the kingdoms bordering the Xeno Kingdom and turned their royal families and their retainers into his subordinates. Following his commands, all of them declared to become vassals of the Xeno Kingdom, effectively expanding its territory. By the time Lux was finished, the Xeno Kingdom was no longer a kingdom. It was already an empire. Victor didn't know how to feel when all the rulers of the subjugated kingdoms visited him and pledged their allegiance. He didn't expect his future son-in-law to do such a thing, and he felt quite touched by his gesture. "Our future son-in-law is more capable than I originally thought," Aina's mother, Queen Felicia, said to her husband. "Do you still want to prevent him from marrying Aina?" Victor could only smile bitterly because there was no need to answer his wife's question. Prevent Lux from marrying Aina? Wasn't that the same as courting death? No, thank you. Victor knew that he had no other choice but to jump into Lux's ship, or else he'd face the consequences. Although he was certain that the half-elf wouldn't really hurt him because he was Aina's father, he also understood that Lux's mental state wasn't as stable as it used to be. Because of this, he finally talked to his daughter, Aina, and told her that he would support her relationship with Lux. He even asked her when and where she wanted the wedding to take place so that he could prepare a grand wedding for her. While this was happening, Lux was making his way towards the marshlands beyond the borders of the Beast Empire. This was the territory of the Lizard King who had assisted the Divine Army during the battle in the Divine Empire. Lux now had 2 Supremes and hundreds of Calamity-ranked monsters under his command. Unless the allied forces of the Divine Army united under one banner to attack him, no one would be able to stop him. With his strength, he moved unhindered across the territories under the Divine Army's umbrella. The Lizard King had already been expecting Lux's arrival, so he had already ordered his people to evacuate and hide within the vast marshlands of his domain. He had no intention of fighting against the half-elf, so he and his family teleported away from their kingdom and sought shelter within the underground headquarters of the Divine Army of Light. Their plan was to return after the half-elf's anger had subsided. They thought that this plan was perfect. However, they still underestimated Lux. When Lux arrived at the marshlands and found out that the Lizard King and his people had escaped, he ordered his subordinates to destroy every city that they came across. Not only that, he also ordered the monsters under his command, who specialized in poison, to taint the entire marshlands, making it uninhabitable. After leaving the Lizard King's territory, Lux hunted down the Supreme who tried to assassinate his master, Hirswith, during the battle in the Divine Empire next. Although the assassin had used every trick in the book to hide from him, he still wasn't able to escape from Lux's map within the Elysium Compendium. It had taken Lux 3 days to hunt him down, but in the end, the assassin still fell in his hands. With this, the number of Supremes under his command had increased to 3 people, prompting the kingdoms and empires that were affiliated with the Divine Army to declare their independence in the hope that Lux would not target them anymore. But just like everyone else, the half-elf had gone against their hopes. This one-sided conquest lasted for 2 months until, finally, the sovereign and the founder of the Divine Army came out of hiding. But instead of fighting Lux, they went to the Elven Kingdom, the Dragon Kingdom, and the Crystal Palace. The 2 Supremes had asked the rulers of these kingdoms to help them convince Lux to sit at the negotiation table in order to reach a compromise. As to whether the half-elf would accept the invitation, only time would tell. Have you heard? The Westburg Kingdom has fallen a few days ago. A handsome adventurer who was eating inside a tavern told his friend. Yes, his friend replied. The kingdoms bordering that place are now shaking in their boots. The Angel of Death seems to be hellbent on attacking all the territories that are allied with the Divine Army. Speaking of the Divine Army, they haven't made any moves since the battle in the Beast Empire. Did they go into hiding? Beats me. But their influence right now is at an all-time low. Even their staunchest allies have denounced them and declared independence. Another adventurer who heard their discussion snorted. Have you both forgotten? This kingdom also denounced its connection with the Divine Army a day ago, the skinny adventurer stated. What makes you think that the Angel of Death won't visit this place as well? Even if he plans to visit this place, it will still take him a few weeks to get here, the handsome adventurer replied. The Westburg Kingdom is in the east, and according to the reports, the Angel of Death is still headed eastward. The skinny adventurer couldn't refute his words, so he only shook his head and continued drinking his ale. Everyone in the tavern was discussing the news of the Angel of Death's counterattack against the Divine Army, who had killed his master. Some sympathized with him, some despised him, while some didn't care. At the end of the day, as long as they weren't involved in the struggle between these giants, they were more than happy to watch from the side and watch them go for each other's throats. Suddenly, the adventurers heard loud screams coming from outside of the tavern. They immediately went to investigate where the screams were coming from. However, all of them stood frozen in place when they saw countless undead marching through the streets of their city. By the gods! The handsome adventurer muttered as he pointed in the sky. It's him, the Angel of Death. Already become numb after seeing the same thing happening over and over again. The other adventurers followed his gaze and saw a red-headed half-elf with 4 wings flapping behind his back. 2 of those wings were white, while the other 2 were black. He looked down on the city with an indifferent, bored look on his face, as if he had already become numb after seeing the same thing happening over and over again. Isn't he supposed to be targeting the Eastern Kingdoms? The skinny adventurer asked. What is he doing here? There is only one reason as to why he could already be here, the innkeeper commented. It means that he has already subjugated all of the Eastern Kingdoms. What? The handsome adventurer gasped. But there are over a dozen kingdoms affiliated with the Divine Army in the East. How could he possibly subjugate them all this fast? Just as the innkeeper was about to answer, a loud shout spread in the sky, forcing them to look in the direction where it was coming from. You can't do this, a middle-aged man shouted. We are no longer affiliated with the divine army. You can't do this to my kingdom. Yeah, Asmodeus replied, dragging the single syllable. We've heard that countless times already. He sighed as he walked towards the king of the Heraldor Kingdom. You only broke ties with the divine army because you were afraid of being targeted. That's not how the world works, so accept your fate. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for allying with my master's enemies. Asmodeus then stabbed the king's chest with a bone sword, making the latter shriek in pain. The Lich King pulled his sword out, and the middle-aged man looked at his chest in confusion. He clearly felt that he was stabbed, but he was not seeing a bloody hole in his chest. Kneel, Asmodeus ordered. The saints that were holding the king in place removed their hands and allowed the latter to stand on his own feet. At first, the middle-aged man wanted to defy Asmodeus' order, but this thought immediately disappeared as he looked at the half-elf, who was looking back at him with an indifferent look on his face. Master, the middle-aged man said as he respectfully knelt towards the half-elf. But that same arrogant king was now kneeling and looking at Lux as if he was a god. Asmodeus had used the skill Half-Life Zombie, turning the king into one of Lux's servants. The adventurers who saw this were horrified because they knew for a fact that their king was a very arrogant person and would never kneel even in death. But that same arrogant king was now kneeling and looking at Lux as if he was a god. He wouldn't do that to us, right? The handsome adventurer asked. I don't think so, the skinny adventurer replied. I didn't hear any news about him attacking the members of the Adventurers Guild. We are a neutral party, so we stay out of these kinds of conflicts. As if hearing their conversation, Lux glanced in their direction, making all the adventurers subconsciously shudder. The half-elf's gaze was devoid of any emotions, making them feel as if they were staring face-to-face with death. Fortunately, Lux shifted his attention back to his subordinates and nodded. You know what to do, Lux said. All the saints of this kingdom, bring them here. Yes, master. The hundreds of saints that Lux had subjugated all replied in unison. They were the saints of the kingdoms that had fallen under his rule. All of them had been devoured by black fire, so their loyalty now belonged to the half-elf. The rulers and members of the royal family that he had visited had all been turned into half-life zombies, technically making them Lux's slaves. Lux only ordered the rulers to continue managing their kingdoms and ensure that they weeded out all of the corrupt nobles. He also ordered them to ensure that the people would be able to live happy and comfortable lives, especially the common folk who were always suffering from hardships. Since all the powerhouses of the majority of the kingdoms now belonged to Lux, even the small-time criminals and bandits didn't dare cause trouble in the lands he had subjugated. The Angel of Death was someone they didn't want to offend because they knew the outcome of antagonizing him. Lux watched as all the saints were stabbed by Asmodeus in the chest, turning them all to his subordinates. This whole process didn't even last an hour, and as soon as all the big wigs were converted to their side, the undead army inside the city all disappeared as if they were never there in the first place. Let's go, Lux ordered. Immediately, a floating platform, pulled by two griffins, hovered beside the half-elf. Lux casually stepped on it and walked towards his seat of honor. His seat wasn't actually a seat, but a human woman. A beautiful lady, whose feet and hands were tied to 4 posts, was suspended a meter above the floor. She was wearing a one-piece nightgown that clung to the curves of her body, showcasing an alluring sight for any man. However, a month ago, she wasn't wearing anything. Lux simply treated her as his chair, without even feeling anything. This was nearly an impossible task for most young men, especially since the woman's beauty was only a few notches lower than his Grandmaster Hearswith. The Beast King couldn't tolerate it anymore and pleaded that the half-elf should at least give her something to wear. At first, Lux ignored the Beast King's words, but after a few more days, he had calmed down a bit and allowed the woman to retain a little dignity by letting her wear clothes to cover her body. This person was none other than Maeve, the Oracle of the Divine Army, who had now become Lux's subordinate. Even after Blackfire had devoured her, Lux continued to treat her as an object instead of a person. Maeve, who had just been sat upon, groaned in happiness. Her pride and arrogance could no longer be seen. The only thing that she was feeling right now was deep love and satisfaction toward her master for treating her as his personal chair. No other woman nor man had been given this honor, and she was genuinely happy to be useful to the handsome half-elf, who was now her everything. Sitting on the woman's back, Lux closed his eyes and meditated. He could feel that the killing intent inside his body was starting to go out of control. He had truly been doing his best to hold himself back from starting a massacre. If not for Queen Bianca's interference back in the Beast Empire, Lux might have done something that he would definitely regret in his lifetime. The half-elf had almost attacked the Beast King, along with his twin daughters, in his anger. Back then, he really didn't care whether he killed everyone in sight. Fortunately, the little bit of conscience that remained had kicked in the moment Blackfire and Queen Bianca appeared. Since then, he had been bottling up his killing intent as he visited the kingdoms that were affiliated with the Divine Army. Diablo, Asmodeus, and Lux's other named creatures all looked at their master with concern on their faces. They didn't want their master to completely fall into damnation, so Asmodeus took it upon himself to do the job of converting their enemies into slaves on behalf of his master, in hopes that the latter would have less burden. The people of the recently subjugated kingdom looked at the floating platform with awe, fear, and admiration. This was the Angel of Death, and no organization in Elysium, not even the Divine Army, dared to oppose him at the moment. All of them feared that they would suffer the same fate as the beautiful Oracle, who would now live and die for the sake of Lux's happiness. While Lux was busy subjugating the kingdoms and empires that were once part of the organization that he hated the most, the sovereign and the founder of the Divine Army were currently inside the royal palace of Asporfrieden. It hasn't been long since we last saw each other. The High King of the High Elves looked at his two guests with a smile on his face. Well then, care to say what you want from me? The Elven King knew that the two people in front of him didn't have time for flowery words, so he decided to get straight to the point. I want you to help convince the half-elf to stop what he is doing, the sovereign of the Divine Army replied. This cannot continue any longer. The Gate of the Abyss is becoming more active. Are willing to set aside these differences for the bigger picture? Or do you want us to really fight that brat using the full might of the Divine Army? The Elven King frowned. Truth be told, he didn't really want to aid these two individuals since they were responsible for his daughter's death. However, that also wouldn't change the fact that the Divine Army still had a big role to play when it came to protecting Elysium from the abyssal invasion. Are you willing to pay a hefty compensation to appease Lux? The Elf King asked. The founder of the Divine Army shrugged. Truth be told, we don't really care if he subjugated all the kingdoms that were once part of our organization. We are just asking for your help because we don't want this nonsense to continue. There are far more important matters that should be addressed at the moment. The sovereign nodded. Do not forget the oath of the Supremes. Although we are on opposite sides, the fate of this world is much more important than our squabbles. Of course, you can choose to ignore us. But if you do that, we will also ignore our duty to protect Elysium. The founder sighed. I don't want to see the day when it will be your turn to beg us for help. So in order to put this matter behind us, all of you should step up and stop that brat from going overboard. For people who are asking for help, both of you are really annoying. The Elf King smiled bitterly. If you really want to reach a compromise with him, I advise that both of you take a step back and stop being stubborn. Are you two not ashamed about being forced into this state by a junior? The sovereign chuckled. Of course, we are ashamed. But so what? We have already reached a point of no return with that half-elf. Either he dies or we die. However, we are willing to set aside these differences for the bigger picture. Or do you want us to really fight that brat using the full might of the Divine Army? Although we will take great losses, I guarantee that we will be the ones winning in the end. The sovereign's words were firm, and his eyes burned with determination. He wasn't lying when he said that their organization would win in the end. Even if Lux were to subjugate all the Supremes in Elysium and wage war against the Divine Army would still win in the end. The reason for this was simple. They held one of the pillars of eternity, an artifact that could bend the elements and laws of the world to their will. The Supremes and a few saints were aware of the existence of the pillars of eternity. They also knew that the Divine Army was in possession of one. It was because of this artifact that they had managed to succeed with their apostle project, creating pseudo-supremes that would be helpful when the Abyssal army invaded their world. The Abyss might have over 1,000 demigods, but so what? If even the lowly apostles were to gain the power of pseudo-supremes, these thousands of demigods would suffer great losses when all the apostles in Elysium gained the power to fight them head-on. At least, this was what the divine army believed. This was where their confidence was coming from. I already told you that both of you should take a step back, the Elf King stated in a cold tone. You are the one asking me for a favor, so don't act high and mighty in front of me. So what if you have one of the pillars of eternity? If you are so strong, then why don't you fight the Abyss on your own? Since you are so strong, then go ahead and fight Lux. What's wrong? Do you want me to hold your hand when you face him? The Elf King scoffed as he made his stand. He wasn't a nanny, so he would not lift a finger if the two bastards didn't want to cooperate. Fine. The founder of the Divine Army nodded. We are willing to compensate that brat. Are you happy now? Bastard, is that how you refer to your elder? The Elf King sneered. You are only a few thousand years older than me, the founder replied. What? Do you want me to call you great-grandpa or something? The three Supremes who had the power to flip the situation of Elysium upside down bickered like little kids. The irony of it all was that they were bickering because of a kid who had lost his patience and was now moving unhindered in the central regions of the continent, turning those who opposed him into his slaves. While the three were discussing the half-elf's compensation, an extremely beautiful elf entered the throne room. The three Supremes looked at the new arrival at the same time. About time you old frogs came here to beg for my father's help, Hearswith said in a teasing tone. So, what did you all agree on? Are you going to compensate my grand disciple for his heartaches? Something like that, the founder of the Divine Army replied. He gazed at Hearswith in a calm manner, as if the two of them hadn't once tried to kill each other. Good. Hearswith nodded. Let me guess. Are you going to ask for the help of the Dragon King and the steward of the Crystal Palace next? That's the plan, the sovereign answered. I see, well then, shall we go now? Hearswith smiled. The faster you talk to them, the sooner I will be able to see my cute grand disciple, and the sooner you old frogs can scram. The founder and the sovereign of the Divine Army glanced at each other before nodding in unison. With Hearswith coming with them, they would have an easier time convincing the Dragon King, as well as the steward of the Crystal Palace, to help convince the half-elf to stop his tantrum. Hearswith watched the two old men with a smile on his face. However, she also had her own plans in order to quell her grand disciple's anger. She was also very worried about his state of mind. Fortunately, she knew the people who would be able to help Lux. To do that, she would need to go to the Dragon Kingdom, as well as the Crystal Palace, and convince their rulers to allow her to borrow a few ladies who would be able to help her grand disciple regain a bit of his sanity. After finalizing the compensation for the half-elf, the three people headed toward Karshvar Draconis in order to talk to the Dragon King. Hearswith had already sent a message to Gerhardt and Keen, who were currently staying in the Xeno Empire. She had also sent a message to Kai, informing her of the current situation. Just wait a little longer, Lux, Hearswith thought as she entered the teleportation gate that would send them to Karshvar Draconis. Your Grandmaster is coming to help you. Right now, the only thing that could melt her disciple's cold heart was human touch. Since that was the case, she would bring the people who could melt the half-elf's heart and help him return to who he once was. The Dragon King stared at the founder and sovereign of the Divine Army, who were now standing in front of him. His two guests stared back at him, not saying anything. From the moment they arrived up to now, all of them were in this state. No talk, no anything. Simply staring. This went on for nearly 10 minutes, and it was only cut off when someone lightly cleared her throat. Can you guys get this over with? Hearswith asked impatiently. We still have places to go. The three Supremes looked at her for a few seconds before facing each other. So, what do you want? The Dragon King asked. Help us bring the boy to the negotiation table and stop his madness, the founder replied crisply. The Dragon King briefly glanced at Hearswith, wanting to know her opinion about the matter. The beautiful elf nodded her head, making her opinion known. Fine, the Dragon King stated. You can settle your negotiations here in my territory since it is neutral ground. Good. The sovereign of the divine army nodded. Thank you for your help. MMM. The Dragon King waved his hand, as if what he did wasn't a big deal. The founder then glanced at Hearswith and asked a question. Shall we go now to the Crystal Palace? The founder asked. He knew that the Dragon King only agreed because of Hearswith's presence. Now that they had gotten his agreement, there was only one last place to visit before they called it a day. The two of you head to the Crystal Palace first, Hearswith replied. I'll follow you shortly. I need to have a private talk with the Dragon King. The sovereign and the founder nodded before leaving the throne room. The Dragon King raised his hand, signaling his royal guards to also leave. When only Hearswith and the Dragon King remained, the beautiful elf smiled and asked the Dragon King for a favor. My grand disciple is not in the right state of mind right now, and even I will have a hard time convincing him to stop his rampage, Hearswith said. What he needs right now are his close friends who would be able to sway his decision. With that said, can I take Valerie, Ollie, and Ari with me to see him for a while? I promise that I'll protect them and bring them back here safely. The Dragon King frowned after hearing Hearswith's words. He was aware that his daughter and the half-elf had become friends, which was the same reason why he let his daughter come along and see JP's execution. The Dragon King wanted his daughter to know that being with Lux was a bad idea because he was a magnet for trouble, and that she should look for better friends in the future. I can agree to sending Ollie and Ari, but does Valerie need to go as well? The Dragon King asked. Of course, Hearswith replied without batting an eye. My disciple is an emotional person. The reason why he is acting this way is because those divine toads involved his friends in their conflict. Since that is the case, only his friends will be able to sway his heart. Can't you do that? You are his grandmaster after all. I can't. Truth be told, I want to join him in his rampage. You know me and my vulgar mouth. If I was there, I'd probably start a litany of curses as soon as I arrive. Instead of helping, I might make things worse instead. The Dragon King reluctantly nodded his head because he could see Hearswith's point. Even so, he was still on the fence about sending his beloved daughter to meet with the half-elf, who was currently not in his right state of mind. Please, Hearswith asked, if you agree to this, I will owe you a favor. You'll go this far for your grand disciple? The Dragon King asked. Of course I will, Hearswith replied. After all, he is the only disciple I have that remains. The Dragon King sighed after hearing Hearswith's words. Very well, I will send Faustina to escort her as well, the Dragon King stated. However, Hearswith shook her head. There's no need for Lady Faustina to escort Valerie and her two handmaidens, Hearswith commented. Or are you saying that a demigod like me is not enough to ensure your daughter's safety? I'd like to see who has the guts to try to harm her under my watch. If they think that my grand disciple is already hard to deal with, they ain't seen nothing yet. The Dragon King pondered before nodding his head in agreement. Very well, you may take my daughter and her handmaidens with you, the Dragon King replied. However, you must return them here as soon as possible. Of course, Hearswith smiled. You can count on me. The Dragon King looked at the beautiful elf who had a very sweet smile on her face. For some reason, her smile made him feel uncomfortable, as if she was planning something that he wasn't aware of. After getting his approval, Hearswith didn't waste any more time and looked for Valerie, Ollie, and Ari. After telling the three girls about the situation, they readily agreed to come with her to see Lux. The news of Lux's rampage had been kept under wraps by her father, so they weren't aware of what was happening outside the Dragon Kingdom. So when they were told about the context of the situation, they readily agreed to go with Hearswith. They were truly worried about the half-elf, who had made them all his lovers. Hearswith brought the three ladies to Lux's guild headquarters, which was located in the Crystal Palace. To their surprise, Iris, Kai, and a dwarf with doll-like beauty were also there, waiting for Hearswith's arrival. Valerie, Ollie, and Ari were already familiar with Iris and Kai. Actually, they felt slightly intimidated by Lux's two fiancées because they had recognized them as ladies above their rank. Simply put, Iris was going to be Lux's first wife, while Kai would become his second wife. Valerie would become his third wife. As for Ali and Ari, the two didn't want to fight for the position to be one of Lux's wives. Both of them were content to become Lux's concubines, as long as he loved them just as much as he did his other lovers. Aina was perhaps the only one who wasn't intimidated by Iris and Kai. Her expressionless face also made it hard for the others to know what she was thinking. "I will leave you girls for a while," Hirswith said. "I will pick up her in the Crystal Palace. After that, we will leave together to find Lux. Use this opportunity to get to know each other better." Without another word, Hirswith disappeared, leaving the girls behind. "Hello?" Valerie took the initiative to talk to Aina because she looked harmless in her eyes. "My name is Valerie. These are my two handmaidens, Ali and Ari. May I know your name?" The dwarf looked at her before nodding her head. "My name is Aina Goldenslayer," Aina replied. "Just call me Aina." Valerie smiled before sitting beside the dwarf, who still had an expressionless look on her face. "Are you perhaps Lux's friend?" Valerie asked in an innocent tone. "I am more than his friend," Aina replied in the same expressionless tone that she always used when she talked. "I am his fiancée, and the reason why he is suffering right now." Although her expression remained the same, a tinge of sadness appeared in Aina's eyes, which was something that the ladies didn't miss. However, when they heard that she was the reason why Lux was waging war against the divine army in the center of the continent, all the ladies in the room looked at her with solemn expressions on their faces. "Can you please tell us what happened?" Iris asked. "Lux was with me and Kai and Solais before he disappeared without a word. We didn't know where he went or what he planned on doing. We only came to learn about what had happened when his grandmaster contacted Kai and told us that we should come to Elysium because Lux needed our support." Aina stared at Lux's first fiancé for a few seconds before nodding her head. "I will tell you everything," Aina replied. She then started her tale when several saints had confronted her parents within their kingdom with the intention of forcefully taking her and her little sister away as hostages. Aurora, who was also inside the room, joined the conversation and temporarily took over the storytelling, sharing how Lux asked for her help in order to release the calamity-ranked monsters inside the inner sanctum of the Pantheon of Exile. The lady who bore the title of Misfortune's Beloved told them how Lux painstakingly subjugated hundreds of calamity-ranked monsters before he went to the Beast Empire in order to save Aina. After Aurora finished sharing her part, Aina told everyone what had transpired in the Beast Empire before Lux set off on a journey to subjugate the kingdoms that were along the borders of the Xeno Kingdom. She told them how Lux forced these kingdoms to become their vassals, effectively changing the Xeno Kingdom into the Xeno Empire. The more Lux's lovers heard Aina's tale, the more they realized how serious the situation was. Because of this, they started to become impatient as they waited for Hirswith to take them to Lux, who was currently on his way to another kingdom that was once under the protection of the Divine Army of Light. After the founder and the sovereign of the Divine Army finished their talks with the steward of the Crystal Palace, they returned to their headquarters to prepare the compensation they were going to give the half-elf in order to stop his rampage. Herewith then told or about Lux's current state, which made the latter ask her aunt for permission to go with Hirswith. "Aunt, please let me see Lux," or pleaded. "I want to help him." Lady Augustina looked at or with a complicated look on her face. A minute later, a sigh escaped her lips before she nodded her head. The steward of the Crystal Palace then shifted her attention to Hirswith and held her gaze. "Can you ensure Or's safety?" Lady Augustina asked. "I promise to protect Or with my life," Hirswith replied. Lady Augustina nodded. She understood that even if she said no, Or would still insist on going with Hirswith. "Very well," Lady Augustina said before resting her hand on Or's shoulder. "You may go, but make sure to do things in moderation, okay?" Or blinked once then twice because she didn't understand what her aunt was talking about. Lady Augustina only smiled after seeing the confusion on Or's face. The steward of the Crystal Palace and Hirswith gave each other a knowing glance, fully knowing that Or was no longer a chaste maiden. After getting her aunt's permission, Aurelia went to look for her mother to tell her where she was going. The Dragon Queen of the Crystal Palace, Queen Evangeline, nodded in understanding. "Take care of yourself," Queen Evangeline said softly as she hugged her daughter. "Also, make sure to not do anything suspicious in front of others." You have to remember that in the eyes of your people and the rest of the world, you are the Dragon Prince. Do I make myself clear? Or nodded. Yes, mother. I will be careful. I know you will. Come back as soon as you can. Understood, mother, and thank you. After saying goodbye to her mother, or went with Hearswith to Lux's guild headquarters. There, she met the rest of Lux's women, which surprised her very much. I'm sure that you girls are excited to meet my handsome, kind, caring, loving, and drop-dead gorgeous grand disciple, Hearswith said with a smile. Since that is the case, let's not waste any more time and meet up with him. Hearswith then waved her hand, and all the ladies were encapsulated in a dome of purple light. She then made a slashing gesture in front of her with her hand, creating a crack in space that looked very ominous. Don't worry, ladies. Hearswith winked at the girls. Although traveling inside the dimensional space is dangerous, you will be safe as long as I'm around. Without another word, she opened the palm of her hand, and the dome that protected the girls shrank. The dome, which was now as big as a baseball ball, flew into Hearswith's hands. Let's go. Hearswith took a step forward to enter the crack in space and disappeared from the territory of the Crystal Palace. Meanwhile, in the Torsten Kingdom, the members of the royal family of the Torsten Kingdom all knelt in front of Lux and swore their allegiance. The half-elf, currently seated on the oracle's back, simply glanced at his newly pledged servants with an indifferent look on his face. Asmodeus, who had handled everything from start to finish, raised his hand and gave his orders. From now on, you are under the rule of my master, Asmodeus stated. You are to root out all the corrupt officials of your kingdom, as well as the rotten nobles, who made things difficult for your people. Also, you are to create new laws that will ensure that the common folk will not be oppressed by the nobles of your kingdom. If I hear any reports that you are doing a sloppy job, I will come back and give you all a lesson you will never forget. Do I make myself clear? Yes, master. Good. Now attend to your duties, Asmodeus ordered. The members of the royal family gave Lux a respectful bow before hurrying back to the royal palace. Suddenly, a crack of space appeared a few meters away from the half-elf, which made Diablo, Asmodeus, and the rest of Lux's named creatures gather in front of his master in order to defend him. On the other hand, Lux remained calm and quietly stared at the crack of space in front of him. A few seconds later, an extremely beautiful elf stepped out of the crack, making Lux's subordinates lower their guard. Hello, everyone, Hearswith said with a smile. Missed me? Lux's grandmaster casually walked towards her grand disciple in order to take a better look at him. Diablo, Asmodeus, and the others parted to let the beautiful elf through because they knew that Hearswith wouldn't do anything to harm their master. Greetings, Grandmaster, Lux said as he tried to stand up, but Hearswith was faster and placed her hand on Lux's shoulder, preventing him from standing. Just stay seated, Hearswith commented. I like what I'm seeing. A faint smile appeared on Lux's face as he nodded his head. Hearswith then looked down on the oracle, whose head was nearly touching the floor. The half-elf could tell that his master truly liked what she was seeing, which made him a little happy in his heart. A minute later, Hearswith lovingly pulled Lux's head toward her chest and patted his head affectionately. You've done well, Lux, Hearswith said softly. You showed them who's boss. The beautiful elf noticed that although Lux looked fine overall from a distance, he looked quite haggard from up close. Dark circles could be seen under his eyes, and his complexion wasn't as good as usual. It was quite evident that he hadn't had a good rest since they had last seen each other. The half-elf didn't resist his grandmaster's care and allowed himself to bask in her warmth and kindness. Suddenly, both of them heard voices of discontent coming from somewhere nearby. Hearswith, who had completely forgotten that she hadn't come to meet her grand disciple alone, glanced at the floating orb beside her. Lux also looked in the direction where the voices were coming from. His eyes then widened in shock when he saw Iris, Kai, Aina, Valerie, or Ali, Ari, and Aurora inside the purple orb. Sorry, I almost forgot about them. Hearswith stuck out her tongue before lightly ruffling Lux's head. I know that you were feeling lonely, so I brought your girlfriends with me. The beautiful elf said the words girlfriends in a meaningful way, making Lux feel grateful in his heart. A moment later, Hearswith released the girls from the purple dome, allowing them to approach the half-elf, who had changed considerably since the last time they saw him. Without even waiting for anyone's approval, Aina sat on Lux's lap and gave him a hug. The dwarf rested her head on Lux's shoulder, making everyone look at her in surprise. Iris and Kai also moved forward, but since someone had already claimed Lux's lap, they decided to sit by his left and right side, hugging him as well. Valerie, or Aurora, Ollie, and Ari wanted to do the same, but since they were out in the open, they held themselves back. Valerie was the dragon princess of Karsvar Draconis, while Or was the dragon prince of the Crystal Palace. Although they didn't think that people would raise their eyebrows if they hugged Lux, they didn't want any rumors circulating that might come and bite them in the future. Hearswith, who understood what they were thinking, started barking orders. "All of you, return to your respective kingdoms," Hearswith ordered the Supremes and the Saints, who had followed Lux's army. "We will call for you when we need your services, so for now, scram." The Supremes and the Saints glanced at Lux, who was currently being hugged by 3 beautiful ladies. Although they knew that Hearswith was the half-elf's grandmaster, their master was Lux, not her. "My grandmaster's orders are my orders," Lux said in a firm manner. "Treat her as you treat me. This is my order." "Yes, master." The Beast King glanced at Hearswith with a complicated look on his face before flying towards the royal palace of the Torsten Kingdom. Each royal family had their own private teleportation gate that directly connected them to cities within the sphere of the Divine Army of Light. Because of this, it wouldn't take long for Dylan to return to the Beast Empire. He had already been away for 2 months, and he was missing his family members. In just a span of a few minutes, Lux's mighty army dispersed, leaving only the half-elf, his undead servants, and the members of his covenant behind. Taking the lead, Hearswith led Lux's forces away from the Torsten Kingdom. They needed to find a quiet place so that Lux could spend time with his lovers, who were very eager to help him improve his condition. Perhaps finding the warmth in the arms of his loved ones comfortable, the half-elf allowed himself to fall into a dreamless sleep. Hearswith watched this scene with a smile on her face. The beautiful elf secretly gave herself a pat on the back because her hunch was right. If she met her grand disciple alone, the half-elf would have never lowered his guard the way he did just now. Lux respected Hearswith because she was his grandmaster, but respect wasn't as effective as love when fixing a broken heart. High above the heavens of Elysium, Ariel stared at the candidate that he and Max had chosen to save Solais from destruction. Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. Ariel said softly as he remembered the famous quote that belonged to Lux's world. For a short period of time, peace would settle in the lands of Elysium as all the powerful factions refrained from openly antagonizing each other. But they knew that this peace wouldn't last long. The abyssal gates were becoming active again, and it was only a matter of time before their hard-won peace crumbled under the abyssal lord's overwhelming might. After leaving the territory of the Torsten Kingdom, Hearswith looked for a quiet place where Lux and his lovers could spend some time together. She found this small paradise in a valley. The beautiful elf then tossed an orb on the ground, which immediately transformed into a small villa, similar to the one Lux had stayed at in Spore Frieden. Before anyone could even do anything, Aina, who was the shortest, carried the sleeping half-elf like a princess and entered the residence. The ladies could only look at the doll-like beauty in surprise because Aina's actions were quite bold. After everyone had entered the residence, Hearswith told them that the interior of the house was within her personal domain, which was why it looked bigger than what it looked outside. When she finished telling everyone about the layout of the house, the ladies thought that Aina would carry Lux to the bedroom. However, the dwarf headed toward the underground spring, surprising everyone. Truth be told, it was a very funny scene to look at. A dwarf girl, who was barely over 4 feet tall, was carrying the significantly taller half-elf like a hug pillow, making even Kai giggle due to how novel it looked. Aina didn't care about their thoughts and descended the stairs. If she could have things her way, she wanted to spend some private time with Lux. However, she knew that this was not possible. Knowing this, She decided to hold him for as long as she could before his other lovers got in the way. Upon reaching the underground spring, she gently laid the half-elf on the ground before taking off his clothes. Iris and Kai didn't think twice before making a move to help her, and soon, Lux only had his underwear on. Aina then took this opportunity to remove her own clothes, the expressionless look on her face never changing. She took everything off, leaving nothing behind, allowing all the ladies to stare at her body, which was free from all imperfections. Or, who once held an inferiority complex due to how small her breasts were, looked at Aina's modest chest and couldn't help but remember what Lux had told her during their lovemaking session. The half-elf said that he didn't care about breast size, which alleviated her fears at the time. Now, or no longer felt inferior to Valerie, Ali, and Ari, because she understood that Lux wouldn't treat her any less even though her breasts were smaller than his other lovers. Seeing Aina's chest only affirmed the half-elf's words in her heart, making her feel happy inside. "I'm taking this off," Ari said as she removed Lux's underwear with a mischievous smile on her face. Aurora's face immediately turned beet red after seeing little Lux, who instantly stood tall and proud after reacting to Ari's soft touch. The pink-haired beauty had been dragged by Ali to the underground spring, and she offered no resistance. She was quite worried about Lux's condition, and she only wanted to know if there was anything she could do for him. "Oh my, look at you blushing like this," Ali giggled as she hugged Aurora. "Aren't you the one who told us that you were aiming to become his lover? Although we managed to do that before you did, that doesn't change the fact that you were serious about it, right?" "Oh, of course, I am serious," Aurora stuttered. "But this is this, and that is that." "Don't worry, we will help you," Ari smiled mischievously. "It will only hurt at first, but after that, Lux will rock your world." "Are you talking from experience?" "I am talking from experience." While Ali, Ari, and Aurora were chatting with each other, Aina had once again gathered Lux in her arms and entered the spring water with him. The dwarf then started to rub the half-elf's body with her hand, purely intending to clean it. Soon, all the ladies entered the spring as well and helped the doll-like beauty clean the body of their beloved. Ari used her water magic to clean Lux's head and hair. She did this very carefully to ensure that the water wouldn't wake up the half-elf, who seemed to be in a very deep sleep. With several ladies working together, with the exception of Aurora, they finished the task in no time at all. Half an hour later, they carried the red-headed teenager to the bedroom and marveled at the humongous bed, which could easily fit 50 people without a problem. In fact, the bed occupied most of the room's space, taking the name bedroom to the next level. If they didn't know better, they would probably think that Hearswith had prepared this residence to accommodate all of Lux's lovers when they were together. Once the half-elf was laid down at the center of the bed, all the ladies looked at each other with the serious expressions on their faces. "Let's decide who gets to sleep beside him," Iris proposed. "I will sleep beside him today." Aina didn't hesitate to state her intention of being the first lady to stay by Lux's side. "Okay, then let's do this," Kai commented. "You and Iris will sleep beside Lux today. Tomorrow, it will be me and Valerie. After that, it will be Ali's and Ari's turn, and finally, and Aurora." Everyone wanted to monopolize the half-elf, but since there was only one of him, they decided to compromise and agreed to Kai's proposal. All the girls, with the exception of Aina and Iris, then left the room. Although they wanted to stay with Lux for a little longer, they eventually agreed to take turns to fairly maximize their time with him. Also, not all of them were ready to be in the same room as his other lovers, so they decided to take a step back for now. "Aina, can you tell me more about yourself?" Iris asked as she lay on Lux's right side, while Aina lay on his left. "I know a bit about my other sisters, but this is my first time meeting you." Aina didn't reply right away as she buried her head on Lux's chest while hugging his body. After she had her fill, she looked at Lux's first fiancé, wondering how she could explain her relationship with Lux. There was a voice that spoke inside her head that she shouldn't mention anything about Earth, but the voice told her that she could mention that she and Lux knew each other in their past lives. "This may sound unbelievable, but Lux and I already had feelings for each other before he met any of you," Aina said after careful consideration. "I'm talking about our past lives." "Past lives," Iris narrowed her eyes. I see. Now I understand why you act the way you do. Valerie, or Ali and Ari, are a bit intimidated by me and Kai because they know that we are Lux's first and second fiancés. As for you, you don't really consider us as your rival, right? Of course not, Aina replied in a heartbeat. Although Lux and I didn't really become true lovers in our past lives, our feelings for each other are very strong. Don't get me wrong. I am not here to compete with any of you. I just know that Lux loves me very much, and my feelings for him wouldn't lose to any of yours. Iris smiled as she placed her hand over Aina's hand. I'm glad that you feel that way about him, Iris said. But I am still his first fiancé in this world, and I don't plan to give up that position. You're quite competitive, huh? Aina asked as the corners of her mouth twitched. Of course I am, Iris returned Aina's smile. After all, I defied my father's wishes in order to be with him. Iris then told Aina how her feelings for Lux grew stronger as they grew up together. The doll-like beauty listened patiently and even felt a little envious because Iris was able to grow up with Lux. This meant that the blue-haired girl had seen Lux's many faces, which included his suffering, happiness, sadness, and frustrations as he did his best to gain the right to enter Elysium. Soon, the two ladies started to talk about ways to prevent Lux from increasing the number of ladies in his harem. Both of them also agreed that Aurora would become the half-elf's lover, but that they would not entertain any more possible candidates. Iris and Aina became closer to each other and strengthened their bonds by treating each other as sisters. The two talked, and before they knew it, both of them fell asleep while hugging the man they loved. They knew that Lux was tired, so they didn't make any moves to make love with him and simply allowed him to get the rest that he deserved. As the days passed, the girls took turns in staying with Lux. When Ali's and Ari's turn came next, the two didn't act like the half-elf's other lovers who simply snuggled with him as he slept. Even when he was sleeping, little Lux was quite lively, which made the two handmaidens very happy. Of course, Ari made sure that no evidence was left of their lovemaking and cleaned Lux's body and the sheets with her water magic. On the fourth day, Lux finally opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was Aurelia's sleeping face, which melted his heart. It was very rare for her to show this defenseless side of her, and the half-elf felt happy that it was the first thing he saw after waking up. She wasn't wearing any clothes, so he could feel her warmth and softness, making him sigh in his heart. However, his body stiffened when he saw the other lady sleeping on his right side. Similar to Aurelia, Aurora was completely naked and was also clinging onto his body as she slept. Lux wasn't dense, and he knew Aurora had feelings for him. Also, he would be lying if he said that he didn't have feelings for her. If he didn't, he wouldn't have gone all out into trying to free her from the inner sanctum of the Pantheon of Exile. However, neither of them had taken that step to confess their feelings to each other, making them more than friends, but less than lovers. As if sensing that someone was looking at her intently, Aurora stirred in her sleep and slowly opened her eyes. She then raised her head and looked sleepily at the half-elf, who was looking back at her with a complicated look on his face. The beautiful young lady smiled and kissed Lux's lips before going back to sleep. However, just as she was about to close her eyes, a dawn of realization descended upon her. As if cold water was poured over her head, her sleepiness disappeared, making her open her eyes wide. She then raised her head to look at Lux, and after confirming that the half-elf was indeed awake and was looking at her in a daze, the young lady froze in shock. Lux, this? Aurora stuttered as she tried to think of the right words to say. Seeing her anxious and troubled look, Lux smiled and lightly patted her head. It's okay, Lux said softly. I understand. But are you sure about this? Aurora, who instinctively knew that Lux had understood her feelings, nodded her head shyly. Okay, Lux said as he pulled Aurora close to him and kissed her forehead. He then gently guided her head to rest on his shoulder as he continued to lightly pat her head. Let's take things slow, okay? Aurora nodded. Okay. Aurora closed her eyes and enjoyed the happiness that was rising inside her chest. Both of them had finally taken the step to confirm their feelings for each other, and with this, she was one step closer to achieving her dream. Lux then hugged his two lovers closer to him and kissed their foreheads. "How long was I asleep?" Lux inquired. "For days," Aurora replied. "We made sure to feed you some potions to help you recover while you were sleeping." The half-elf was surprised to find out that he had slept for 4 whole days. But after recalling that he hadn't had any sleep for nearly 2 months since his counterattack started, he thought that sleeping for 4 days wasn't such a bad thing. He felt very refreshed, and the haziness in his mind and heart had also disappeared. For a moment, he didn't say anything and simply held Aurelia and Aurora in his arms. He understood that he still had things to do, but he was very reluctant to part with the two ladies who had helped him recover in more ways than one. Perhaps Aurora understood what Lux felt, so she simply held on to him with her eyes closed. They remained in this position for an hour, until Aurelia woke up. The Dragon Princess was quite happy upon seeing that Lux was already awake. She had been very worried about Lux, so her overflowing emotions got the best of her. Before she knew it, she was already kissing her lover passionately, and the half-elf responded in kind. Fortunately, Aurelia was sated with kisses and didn't go all the way with Lux, making Aurora sigh in relief. She was afraid that if Aurelia lost control, she would be dragged into their lovemaking, which was something that she didn't want to happen at this point in time. Of course, she wanted to make love with Lux, but she wanted to do it with only the two of them. She didn't want to share that intimate moment with someone else, and Lux understood this as well. After cuddling for a few minutes, the three decided to put on some clothes and meet up with the others. Just like Aurelia and Aurora expected, the other girls were also very happy to see that Lux had finally awakened from his long slumber. They took turns hugging and kissing Lux, making the latter fall in love with them all over again. Just as he finished hugging Valerie, Lux found himself face to face with his grandmaster, Hearswith, who was looking at him with a smile on her face. "Saying that you won't give me one?" Lux shook his head helplessly as he also gave the extremely beautiful elf a hug. "Thank you, Grandmaster," Lux said. He was truly very thankful to Hearswith because 4 days ago, he was on the verge of losing control over his emotions. When his Grandmaster arrived with his lovers, the half-elf's guard finally lowered and his body took preventive measures, automatically shutting down to maximize his recovery. "Grandmaster, can you please tell me what the latest news is on the continent?" Lux inquired after the hug ended. Hearswith nodded. "For starters, the other kingdoms, who were once affiliated with the Divine Army, are currently feeling anxious that you might pay them a visit. Also, the crime rate in the kingdoms that you have subjugated has decreased by 90%. The sovereign and the founder of the Divine Army want to meet with you to reach a compromise. The venue of this meeting will take place in Karshvar Draconis, and it's scheduled 10 days from now. Don't worry, you still have plenty of time to repay your lovers for taking good care of you when you were sleeping. I'm sure that all of you have a lot of catching up to do. So, as the third wheel, I will now take my leave. This place is relatively safe, but just to be on the safe side, make sure to erect a barrier. You won't want to be disturbed while you are having fun, right? So, don't hesitate to jam it in." The ladies, who heard Hearswith's playful words, all blushed because they were also looking forward to it. Hearswith then lightly pinched Lux's right cheek before giving him a wink. The beautiful elf then left the residence so that Lux and his girls, "Where's my hug?" Hearswith asked in a teasing tone. "Or you could finally have some quality time with each other." She spent a lot of effort to gather all of them, so it would be a waste if her grand disciple didn't put this opportunity to good use. Lux and his lovers had a light breakfast before they went to the underground spring together. The half-elf still had a few days before the meeting with the Divine Army started. Until then, he would not hesitate to embrace his women and renew his feelings of love for each and every one of them. "Ari, are you sure that you're really a dragon and not a succubus?" Lux asked as he panted for breath. Ari was also panting for breath as she held onto the half-elf's neck, pressing her seductive body against his chest. Right now, she could feel Lux's seed still spurting at the entrance of her womb, melting her heart from the inside out. Ari couldn't get enough of this feeling. Ever since Lux had become her lover, she felt addicted to the intimate moments they spent together. "How many times are you going to ask this question?" Ari asked back before giving Lux's lips a light peck. "I'm a dragon, not a succubus." Also, don't you think it's very rude to think of another woman while making love to me? I can feel that you are comparing me to someone." The beautiful dragon lady then lightly pulled Lux's right ear, making the latter wince in pain. "Sorry," Lux apologized because he knew that he was in the wrong. "I just can't help it. Every time I make love to you, I feel as if you were trying to suck my soul out of my body. Do I make you feel that good?" Ari inquired with a sweet smile on her face. Making Lux feel good was something to be proud of. In fact, perhaps among Lux's lovers, Ari was the only one who took making love to him very seriously. This was why she was doing her best to try new things in order to spice up their lovemaking. "Yes, it was the best," Lux replied before kissing her again. This time, the kiss was longer and sweeter. Ari could feel her heart overflowing with happiness because her upper and lower lips were being kissed at the same time. Half an hour later, Lux left the room with a satisfied look on his face. Originally, he thought that his lovers would insist that they made love with each other as a whole group. But it seems like he underestimated how much they wanted to monopolize him. All of them agreed to take turns, spending 4 hours alone with him, allowing Lux to only rest for 1 hour to recover his strength before embracing one of them again. With this, Lux spent 4 days straight making love to his lovers, the last one being Ari, who was in his embrace. However, there was still one lady within the residence whom he still hadn't touched, and that was none other than Aurora. Both of them silently agreed that this wasn't the right time and place for the two of them to become one. Lux planned to travel with just Aurora once his meeting with the Divine Army ended, spending some quality time with her. The half-elf knocked on Aurora's bedroom, wanting to eat dinner with her. However, the young lady only spoke to him behind closed doors, telling him that she had already eaten and that Lux should eat with his other lovers for the time being. "Okay," Lux said, "but let's have breakfast together tomorrow." "Understood," Aurora replied. "See you tomorrow, Lux." The half-elf then left to go to the dining table and searched for who was still awake to eat with him. Aurora, who was standing behind the door, sighed. She was not wearing anything, and her face was flushed. Beads of sweat glistened on her perfect body, and a honey-like fluid was leaking out of the entrance of her cave. Lux was not aware that during the 4 days that he was making love with his lovers, Aurora had locked herself up inside her room. Even though she wasn't doing anything, her consciousness somehow merged with the bodies of Lux's lovers, allowing her to feel what they were feeling. In short, every time Lux made love to someone, he was indirectly making love to Aurora as well due to their shared connection. This made the pink-haired beauty experience a sweet kind of torture, allowing her to experience many forms of pleasure. "Ari is a scary one," Aurora muttered under her breath. Her ability also allowed her to feel what Lux was feeling as long as the girl he was sharing a bond with was joining or having a skinship with him. Since she was able to feel and experience what both sides were feeling, Aurora could tell that Ari had successfully made Lux develop a craving for her body. But through these shared senses, she also discovered other things. Aurora also realized that, although Lux loved all of his lovers with all of his heart, he didn't love them equally, which was a very normal thing. Even parents had their own favorites when it came to their children, and Lux felt the same when it came to his lovers. When Lux was with Aina, Aurora could tell that his heart was overflowing with love. This love was so strong and sweet that the pink-haired beauty felt as if she was the one receiving Lux's love, making her feel that she was the happiest young lady in the world. She also realized that when Lux made love with Aina, he treated her with great care. His touch would send jolts of electricity running through the doll-like beauty's body, making her subconsciously moan due to how good it felt. In short, Lux would make sweet, slow, and intimate love with Aina, filling her heart with a love that made her feel as if he was treating her as the one most precious to him. Aurora would be lying if she didn't feel envious of Lux's love for Aina. But after everything that she had been through, she found out that the half-elf's love, no matter how differently he treated his lovers, was unique in its own way. Lux loved to kiss Aurelia the most. In fact, he loved kissing Aurelia so much that whenever they were together, he would spend most of the time kissing her. And, for some reason, the dragon princess liked to be kissed as well. Both of them would kiss while they were connected with each other, moving in slow, rhythmic patterns, fully enjoying the best of both worlds. After Valerie had lost her chastity, she became a little bolder whenever she had the opportunity to make love with Lux. She would often ask him to do things that Lux had never done with the other girls, making her the most adventurous among his lovers. Also, Aurora felt how strongly Valerie wished to bear Lux's child, and it made her wonder if she would be willing to do the same. Of course, she also wanted to give birth to and raise Lux's children, but Valerie's emotions when it came to baby making were so strong that Lux treated her differently from his other lovers. She could tell that Lux was also serious when it came to getting the extremely beautiful dragon princess to conceive his child. Aurora could even vaguely feel that Lux was even looking forward to seeing his baby, which would be born through his union with Valerie. Iris, on the other hand, made Aurora smile. Among Lux's lovers, her feelings of love for the half-elf surpassed even Aina's love for him. Although she doesn't show it on her face, Iris was unable to live without Lux in her life. In fact, she had long wanted to bear his child, but Lux kept on telling her that she was still too young and that it wasn't the right time for her to have a baby. Of course, Lux also loved Iris. This love may not be as strong as his feelings of love for Aina, but it was a genuine love that was born from the time that they had spent with each other. This was also the reason why Lux didn't hesitate to cancel his journey midway to the Pantheon of Exile and go to the Abyss in order to save her and Kai. Aurora was certain that if something bad had happened to Iris at that time, Lux would have flipped the entire Abyss upside down in order to avenge her, even if he had to spend his entire lifetime making that happen. That was how important Iris was in Lux's life. She was like an anchor that held him in place, allowing him to have a safe and peaceful home to return to after weathering the violent storms in Elysium.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.